So, episode 3 of One Punch Man came out, and this series, it never disappoints me. This episode was so freaking good, and the hype train continues to keep on going at a nice pace. And so we see now that this episode had really covered the House of Evolution, and I thought that this right here would be like maybe a long kind of arc, but no. We took care of this part in one episode, and that right there was like freaking insane. And so we see now, thanks to that cyborg ape from last week, we learned now that the one behind this, his name is Genius, and we see now that obviously the guy's like very smart. You know, while he was like growing up, he got nothing but praise and prizes. But we see now that every time this guy had like an idea, he never got any support from the scientific community. And we see now that his real goal, it was like to better humanity or evolve humanity in a way that would like be better for him. Because right now he thought everyone was like so below him. You know, they were like monkeys, idiots. And this guy thought himself so highly because he was smart. We learn now that after years and years of like closing off the outside world and just focusing on his research, he was like able to do what he does now. And so we see that at 70 years old, that's when he made his first big break for his plan of evolution. And the first thing he did obviously was to make himself, you know, become younger. And we see after that, he had cloned himself. And then after that, you know, they all made that lab called the House of Evolution. But we see now that Saitama, this guy definitely does not like when people go off, you know, in like one big ramble, because we see that once again, he was like getting pretty annoyed. And so of course that ape, you know, had like more to say, but obviously, you know, we cannot learn all of it. And so right now, you know, when the ape gave us the short version, we learned that Genius over here, he actually wants to like experiment on Saitama, because he wants to know what's like make him so strong and powerful. And so right now it was hilarious, you know, when Saitama said that I'm not introduced, because that right there had me dying. And so now we see thanks to Genos, you know, obviously now they had the idea to actually go to the lab and actually attack, because obviously Genius here, he would not give up so easily, especially when he was like so interested in Saitama. And so right now, when they actually were like going to the lab, we see now that Genius here, he had no choice but to actually prepare his last resort, who was a creature named Carnage Kabuto. And so we see now that this creature, you know, already chained up, it actually killed one of the clones. And I'm positive that Carnage Kabuto has the same voice actor as Joseph Joestar from JoJo. So that right there was already, you know, got me more invested, you know, into the character, because he had, you know, the same voice as the character that I really enjoy. And so right now we see that Saitama and Genus, they were like running to the lab, and Genus here, he was like actually surprised that Saitama was like running there instead of flying. But Saitama said that, you know, normal humans don't fly, which is like definitely true, but humans also don't run that fast and are able to like jump that high. And we see now that once they had reached the lab, because previously we had Genius and the other clones, they had set all the traps, you know, because this right here was an 8-story building. But right now, Genus, he actually does not play around, and we see him quickly, you know, blowing up the place. And not even that, he used so much power, like you can tell that the damage was like freaking massive. And personally, you know, I had no idea that his powers could be that extreme. But I do wonder, you know, if he can do all that damage today, I'm pretty sure Genus is definitely, you know, more powerful than we have seen so far. But right now, we see that the underground basement, that right there was like still safe, and we see now that And we see that while they were like, walking through it, we have Genius talking to Carnage about getting Saitama because, Genius here, he actually has no problem with dying because even if he did, one of the clones can like take his place. And I do wonder if that right there already happened. Like maybe the Genius that we already saw, maybe that one was a clone and the original could have already been killed off because you never know. But right now we have Carnage actually agreed, to fight Saitama because he is pretty strong. And we see now that when Genus had actually picked up, on their signal or, actually detected them, we see now that Genius here, he was actually pretty messed up, and we have Carnage grabbing him by the head and like putting him along now as he charged forward, to Saitama and Genus. And then we see that, Carnage, he did not waste any time because, when Genius was only interested in Saitama, we see Carnage actually punch Genus so hard, he actually went into the wall. And when Saitama called him modern art, I was like freaking dying. But now we see that they had went to like some kind of training room because that right there was like the only place that was suitable for them to actually fight. And so now we see that, before that fight could actually get started, we have Genus, once again trying to like fight Carnage, but obviously, he was no match. And so right now we see Genus pretty much getting the crap beat out of him. And then we see, Genus here, he actually has some speed as well, as we saw him unleash just like a flurry of punches. And that right there looked pretty cool. I will say that the animation, it was top notch as always. And I was like digging it. But obviously because Genus' punches had no effect, that right there, gave Carnage a massive advantage. And we see him now punching him so hard that, not only was it face now cracking, but we also saw him like missing an eye. And so right now, Genesis was like definitely, like pretty messed up. And we see him be like, and we see that his final attack, I thought that right there might like blow up his arm because he seemed to be like short circuiting somewhat when he did, use it. And so now we see just like massive fire blast going to Carnage, and we see him just using his breath alone to like blow it back. And then when you see Genesis, rocking that afro, that right there was hilarious. I do believe that right there will be my picture or thumbnail for the video because that right there was like the funniest thing I saw all episode. And so right now, with like Genesis out the way, we can finally see Saitama and Carnage fight. And we even have Genius, coming there as well, because he wants to see this through. Because right now, Saitama, he can be what truly pushes his research, because he had this idea about how to evolve the world since this guy was like 15. And with Saitama's help, he can make that dream a reality, even though his dream seemed to like screw over everybody else and just make the world better for himself. And so right now we see that even though Carnage is like a pretty big dude, he was still freaking fast. And we see him get behind Saitama like it was nothing. But we see now that all of his like animal instincts were like kicking in and showed him or told him that, Saitama was a pretty bad dude. And we see him back off immediately. And so right now we have Carnage pretty freaking, pretty freaking scared now. And so we see that, he was like wondering how in the world did Saitama get so strong. And of course, Genesis and Genius, they also wanted to know as well. And so we see that when Saitama had told them, his training regimen, where he did, I believe he said 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, and 100 squats, and also do a 10-kilometer run like every day. And that right there, made him stronger. We see that like nobody, no one believed him on that. And we see now that like Genesis, he was the one who like called him out on that, because right there seems, like a normal training thing that well, hopefully anybody can do. But we see now that, even though nobody will believe him, that right there is what he really did. And so now we see that Carnage, he had got freaking pissed because, you know, he had thought that, you know, Saitama was like really nothing and maybe he should not be scared of him at all. And now we see him going to his Carnage mode. And this right here also like reminded me of Digimon. Because thinking back at season 4 or whatever season it was that had the spirits, that right there reminded me of the bug spirit Digimon of the armor that was present during that season. But now we see that like during his Carnage mode, this guy is like freaking massive, and somehow the training room had now changed and seemed to be almost like infinite in size. And so now we see that while Carnage was like fighting Saitama, you know, we have Saitama, you know, realizing that he made some kind of like huge mistake. And so we see at first that like Carnage was just, you know, like wailing on him, and we see that even though he is now, you know, so much bigger, his speed has not decreased at all. And in fact, I would say in that form he got even faster. And so now when Saitama actually realized the mistake he had made and got really angry, of course that's when he had to use that one punch of his and just kill Carnage, because right now he had thought that, you know, today was like Friday and tomorrow was Saturday for him. And so when he realized that like he was wrong, that right there made him pissed. And then we have Genius here wondering what in the world was like wrong with this guy, or what was going on with him. And we see now that when Genus had showed him that the paper about the sale, it was actually only for today on Saturday, because thanks to Carnage saying that, of course, when he goes to this mode, you know, he cannot be contained or hold back his lust for death, you know, for a week straight. And so that right there is what originally, you know, triggered, you know, Saitama kind of like realizing that. And so right now, when Genus had told him that the store did not close till like 10 p.m., of course, with how fast they could run, they could make it there. And we see now Saitama not wasting any time and actually punched a massive hole in that training room there, and now they had took off. And so right now, you know, like after that, you know, Genius had realized that he was the one that humans were not the one who needed to evolve. It was him himself. And so I do wonder if that right there will make him a good guy now. I highly doubt it. But we see that the aftermath of that, like either Genius escaped or maybe they captured him. But we see like the cops or someone like investigating the aftermath of Genus' attack, and we see now that they definitely know about him. So I do wonder if that right there were like people who work with that doctor who made those body modifications, you know, on him. But overall for episode, you know, this here was fantastic. You know, like, even though Saitama really didn't do that much, because Carnage here was like doing most of the fighting, like Saitama just took like all of those hits before eventually ending it. You know, that fight, it was still pretty good. The animation, as always, you know, base Madhouse, thank God. They are covering this series because the animation, it is so freaking good. But of course, let me know what you guys thought about the episode, and please do not forget to like and subscribe because it really helps me out. But as always, you guys take it easy. I will see you all next time.